Welcome back to CodingCat.dev, where we give you cats the freshest dose of dev snacks. Brought to you by Cloudinary, build faster with AI-powered image and video APIs. Need better search? Try Algolia, powering discovery. Welcome back, perfect peeps. Diving in 2025. I'm a little behind, as always, each year. Excited to have my first guest of the year, Jonathan, on. How's it going, Jonathan?
Great. Hi. Good to have you here. Very
You're
cool
joining me
intro.
from a little later. You're like in Germany in the future, right?
Yeah, it's 5 p.m. here, and it's getting dark already outside.
That's awesome. So today we're going to dive in a little bit to indie hacking, but before we do that, just kind of want to get to know more about you and kind of your development career and how you got kind of into this space and got started going forward.
Yeah, so hi. First of all, I'm Jonathan from Germany, and most people in the internet know me from my indie hacking journey. I started 2.5 years ago building a SaaS starter kit, which was not the first thing I built, but that was the first thing I built in public, and actually the first product that I sold online. I started developing like when I was 15 and went to university, studied computer science, and had my first job in that area. And as of right now, I'm still actively working as a web developer, but that will end in March, and I'm going in full time then as a freelancer. And yeah, really exciting times.
That's awesome. And can you tell me a little bit more, like what drove you kind of to that like indie hacking space? Like what was the motivation behind that?
Yeah, so I mean, indie hacking is, for those who don't know what it means, for me, it means basically starting a product from zero and without funding. So basically, independent of any outside money. And obviously, the reason for many, including myself, to do that is because they don't have money to start anything with. And the nice thing about it is that you can slowly grow something from zero. Most of people, they do it as a side project, and that was the case for me. And just started selling that for, I don't know, what was the initial price? $49, like 2.5 years ago, and it took like 3 weeks to get the first sale. That was
That's amazing.
the best feeling in the world.
Totally.
But then from there, you can slowly start growing that. And the nice thing about it is that still, for me, it's a side project. It means that I am not required to do anything if I don't want. I can take breaks and I can do things at my pace. And I think that's the main reason for most people, is that they want to do their own thing. They want to have the freedom of deciding what happens with their product. And yeah, that's how Superstarter came to life.
And I know, like at university, you studied computational visualistics.
Yeah, I don't know who came up with the name. It's even in Germany, most people don't understand when I say the name what it means. It's basically a combination of computer science and graphic design. So you basically have both the coding part and the visual, especially things like user experience design and things like that. So it's actually a perfect study for a web designer, or some of us got into game development and so on. And having both sides of it is pretty cool.
That's really interesting. My son's he's gonna go into his last 2 years of high school here in the States, and a lot of discussion. Like, he's not a developer, but he loves anime and design, and he's multilingual, like Spanish, Japanese, English, and like trying to find the right fit for him because he loves it so much. It has been very interesting. And so I think a program like this for people that are kind of in between is really interesting. What do you think the impacts of like AI and kind of programming will kind of, I don't know, change people's modalities going through school like that?
So I mean, for me, I didn't experience it in school because the whole AI thing happened just after I graduated. But I can I obviously know that people use it nowadays all the time for either learning, for writing stuff, for whatever. But I think especially for young developers, it's on the one hand side, it's very cool to have that because it enables you to build things a lot faster and probably build things that you weren't able to do like a few years ago without the help of AI, or it required just a massive amount of learning. But on the other hand side, I think it creates the danger of building something where you get to the point where you don't actually know what you build or how you build it, because you know I always look at the V0 stuff from Vercel, or
Totally.
like Bolt, New, whatever that's called, and I think it's pretty cool, and I think the perfect user for that are people who knew if they were to code it, what they would code, so they can actually check what the AI generated. Because when you generate the whole code, or maybe the whole application, like with the UI included, and then something doesn't work and AI is just not able to fix it, like you have no idea how to fix it from there, because you don't know what the AI coded, you don't know where actually to start with it. And I think that's problematic. So I think at least knowing the basics, or at least knowing the technology behind it, is pretty or is necessary. But then I believe that when you code without AI help nowadays, you will be replaced very quickly because you just get too slow.
Yeah. I think knowing the basics, whether it's like just from a computer science level or web development level, you know, even if you look at the JavaScript React or the JavaScript ecosystem, without jumping directly into React and understanding what is JavaScript actually doing, like I think that stays the same way with AI. If you don't know exactly kind of what's coming out, you don't know what to ask to put in, and I think that becomes the challenge in there. So totally great point. I'm still curious about like your progression through this. So you started out and you put a boilerplate together and you like threw some links around to see how it got started. Did you like think in your mind, oh my gosh, like I have enough now, I can make this a business? And what was that kind of journey like for you?
I never really thought to make it a real business, and I don't really do right now. It's making some serious money. That's the case, but it's not a real business in terms of this is something where I think I can grow to, like, you know, millions of dollars. But the starting point of it all was just I had the problem myself that for freelance clients, I was starting from scratch all the time. So I built myself a template that I could reuse, that grew over time. So I added features, and you know, a few projects later, I had something that was not that bad actually, and I thought maybe that would be interesting for some other people. So I just put it online. Put a price tag on it, and as I said, 3 weeks later it got the first sale, and the rest is history.
And that template was enough for you to like, you have other businesses coming in to like spin up some sort of SaaS, and you're like, I can take care of it. I have this template, boom, we get started, and then you're off to the races kind of thing. Is that kind of essentially how you were actually using that template?
Yes. So whenever, like, it was and still is so dynamic or flexible that you can that it fits most web application cases. So it consists of a landing page and a SaaS part or an app part, and you can deactivate either one. You can just pull out the landing page. You can deactivate like certain features. So for most of the customer projects that I did, or like the client projects that I did, I just used that and ripped out everything I didn't need. And that's what most of the customers do this themselves. And then they have a starting point. Some of them actually, the feedback I got, some of them, they actually created their own boilerplate from Superstarter. So they basically ripped out the stuff that they don't like and maybe put in something else, and then take that as a starting point so that everyone can have its own setup there.
Nice. That's awesome. I'm going to pause just for a quick ad break, and then we'll jump into it a little further and kind of see what features Superstarter has.
Cloudinary allows you to remove any unwanted backgrounds, so you can reuse assets efficiently. You can also erase objects and people from images for placement in new experiences. For more engaging content, easily turn static images into dynamic animations, and rely on smart cropping to always deliver assets with a focus on the most relevant objects to your brand. Cloudinary Programmable Media. Build faster with AI-powered image and video APIs.
Algolia helps you create a search and discovery engine in 3 steps. Step 1, import your data. Import the API client, initialize the client and index, load the local JSON file, and then push to Algolia. Step 2, configure relevance. Define searchable attributes, add business metric, specify facets and filtering. And step 3, build your search UI, import widgets from the library, add instant search component, add search input, refine by attribute, display results, add pagination. And just like that, you're done. Build search effortlessly with Algolia.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sponsoring Algolia and Cloudinary. We also use you on the site. Super stoked to continue that. So Jonathan, we were talking a little bit about like indie hacking, how people get started and things like that, and kind of the Superstarter project or boilerplate templates that you started. Can you just dive in more to like all of the different features that it has, and kind of walk us through like why a person would start to use it? Yeah,
sure. Like I won't go too deep into it because there's a lot to it. Like there are this thing has evolved over the last 2.5 years based on the feedback of customers, and so going into every detail would take more time than we have. But the essentials, and it's probably the reason why most people use a boilerplate, is that it has from the front end to the back end all the base parts. So you have a stable front-end application that includes the base marketing pages, so a landing page, like a pricing section, an FAQ section. It includes a blog, it includes a documentation page or documentation feature. And then when you go to the SaaS part of it, it has all the authentication stuff, and not just the login part, but like magic link, passkeys, you have the password reset flow, you have email change name, whatever, you have profile configuration, all that stuff. And then, of course, the most important thing for everyone who actually wants to make money with the SaaS, the payments part. So you have a ready-to-use integration with the major payment platforms like Stripe. We have an integration with Lemon Squeezy. We have an integration with ChargeBee, and since last week or 2 weeks ago with Cream, which is a new player. And with that, you can either charge customers one-time purchase or a one-time fee, or a subscription. And the subscription can be either like classical monthly fee. You can have seat-based billing. So if you have an organization and you want to build a team, but per seat, you can do that too. We are working currently on usage-based billing. So things like, credit-based billing, which is pretty common for AI use cases. And then beyond that, just all the little things, we have mail setup. So we have translatable mail templates where you can build with React components or Vue components, depending on which version you are using. We have an integration with the Vercel AI SDK. We have analytics. We have contact forums. And the most important thing, and that's something that people who say you don't need a boilerplate, you can build everything yourself, regardless of the fact that building all these things would already take days to weeks from scratch, is that we have the community and we have the support of the maintainers. So we have one maintainer for each version, so Next.js, Nuxt, and SvelteKit. And we have a exclusive Discord server where we answer all your questions, where we support you firsthand. And we have very, very extensive documentation, which grows every day. And we're adding new guides and new tutorials to it for the use cases that we get feedback from the customers, and they say, okay, now we want to build this, how can we do this? Or and that's actually the real value behind it, is that you don't only get to save the time and start from, let's say, 50% of your SaaS, but actually you have knowledge that you otherwise would have to collect from either nowadays AI tools like ChatGPT, or maybe the classical ones from tutorials, guides, and whatever. And that's also something that most people at Starter SaaS don't put too much effort in, is the base work for a scalable application. And that's actually what Superstarter, what makes Superstarter differ from the other competitors in the market. Our focus is on creating a production-ready and scalable application. So from the beginning, we built this to be extensible in a way that you could easily add a mobile app, for example. That's the reason why we don't just use the RSCs to load the data in Next.js, but actually have a dedicated API layer. And you can easily attach like a React Native or Ionic app or whatever even a Swift app, because it's just a REST API. We have open API specs, so you can actually create like a type-safe client in Swift or Kotlin. And focus is also on having full control, so that the developer has full control over all parts of the application. So that's why we don't use like a third-party auth provider and lock him into that. And if he scales, suddenly he has to pay thousands of dollars for the auth service. But
that was going to be my first question, because I work at Fusion Auth, and I'm like, I see you using Better Auth. I want to talk a little bit more about it. So no,
we can do that.
Going. I would love.
I was almost done. So what I want to say is the focus is on full control and scalability, so that even if your SaaS kickstarts and gets like 1 million users let's say in the first year, you can use this code base and grow from there, and don't have to rebuild because it's just not scalable.
And how do people, like, once they've used the boilerplate, they continue to build from it? You guys are updating, like, on the other side of it. Is there a clear path to implement those updates? What does something like that look like?
Yeah, that's actually one of the tricky parts. And it's like with all code bases that grow or that change. We do have a documentation guide how to update it, but it's basically rebasing on the main branch, which, as you probably know, becomes harder and harder the further you get away from the original main state. And so what we recommend is either do it very regularly, so like once a week you just rebase on the main thing to see to not have too many merge conflicts at once, or and that's what I see more customers doing, is they don't necessarily rebase after a certain point, but actually just use the main repository as the reference if they want to have something new, because sometimes it's not actually all the things they want to have, but only like this specific feature or this component. And then they just they have the history in the repository, and they can just see the changes in the commit, and then they copy that part over for their application.
That totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me a little bit? Like, I'm thinking through all the things I need at CodingCat, and like I could definitely probably go one-to-one replacement, but I use tools like Firebase for like a database backend for like profiles, authentication, things like that. But then for my blogging, I use want to say Sentry, which is wrong. Sanity. There we go.
Sanity, yeah.
The right S word. So it's a CMS for me for all of my blogs side of the house. What does that look like when you're going through Superstarter?
You mean like
Can you integrate like
or,
existing like CMSs, or is it suggested to basically kind of use what you guys provide and kind of build off of that?
So when it's you just mentioned Firebase, and the funny thing is that Superbase, and that's actually the origin of the name, was originally based on Superbase, which is
that's why I figured.
and that's actually I right now have a poll on X where it says, should I rename Superstarter to Superstarter with ER, because I've gotten too many people who were like, but why can't I use Superbase Auth? Isn't it based on Superbase? And it's like, I want to make clear that the new version, like actually since 2 years, it was basically just the first half year that it was based on Superbase. And nothing against Superbase. I love Superbase, and I am using Superbase for the database and storage for the demo and some of my private applications too. But we just grew this starter kit to a point where it was just we didn't want to lock in people with Superbase, not because we don't think Superbase is great, but because we think there are people just have different opinions. They want to use AWS, they want to use just their self-hosted database, and so we just used Prisma as the ORM, and now you can basically attach every database that you want to it, or database provider, or a self-hosted database. But for things like content management, or actually every other part of the application, we architected this application to always have an abstraction layer. So, for example, we did that for payments. That's the reason why we actually have 4 different payment providers, which you can use with the same interface. If you want to change from Stripe to Lemon Squeezy, you actually.
I'm glad we're both having the issues with similar.
Yeah, the worst example for this is Storyblock and Storybook. I always confuse those.
That one's bad, and then I go from Prisma to Prismic and totally mess those up too. So it's like they're all over. Anyways, sorry, I'll stop interrupting.
So the only thing you need to do is basically to change the env and one file with the import, and everything else is the same. And we try to do that as good as possible for all other parts of the application. And you could easily switch out, like, for example, the source of the block posts with something like Sanity right? So per default, we have an MDX-based content management system. So we use content collections. You can most of the devs, they actually like having their content inside the repository.
Totally. Most marketing people don't, and that's always the challenge: is who is running the blog, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but of course, if you scale the application up, you at some point you add a CMS, and so that the marketing guys can manage the content. But you can easily attach everything you want for content, and the same goes for all other parts. So as we are S3 compatible, so you can actually attach every storage provider. You can use R2, you can use AWS S3, you can use Superbase storage, and so on.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of plugging along. I looked at all of this last night and promptly forgot it all awesomely. One thing that I've been playing around with a lot, and I think you just mentioned one of the products actually, I think this would be a really good fit for like a Cloudflare type of project, just to like example out a little bit. Have you had anyone stand this up on Cloudflare and see success there yet?
That's actually one of the hard challenges I'm facing still, because for some reason I can't get it to work with this Cloudflare Wrangler. It's a very hard thing to say. Configuration. There's always some dependencies that they don't want, and you can basically deploy it everywhere else. We have like serverless on Vercel. You have guides for render, railway, Netlify. We have a Docker image that you can use. We have a Coolify guide that you can use. But like you're right. Too many people have asked me about Cloudflare, and I think they have a really great platform for hosting.
Yeah, I've been trying a lot of like Next.js
Yeah.
deployments on their, I think it's workers pages setup for that
Yeah.
API. I still feel like Cloudflare is somewhat in its infancy on their development products still. So they're kind of changing fast and trying to get to good production products. So I could understand if there's some hiccups on that side you might be running into for sure.
Thing that I wanted to try, which is OpenNext. It's like a collective where they have like it's basically like a dev tool that you can install to easily deploy Next.js applications on
totally yes.
Cloudflare and Netlify.
I forgot
I haven't tried that yet. Maybe that's the solution to deploying Superstarter to Cloudflare. I have to give it a try.
Yep, I totally forgot about this. I was actually using this to compare to what the Cloudflare guide has. So I think there's a fully supported version of this for Cloudflare now. So I think I was gonna say they're missing Pages router still, which
Yeah. Okay. So Superstarter is on the app router.
Okay.
But yeah, the hard thing here, that maybe for you to understand better, is that Superstarter's export is not static. So it's as you know, for a dynamic application, it makes sense. Most of the parts are React Server components, so you need to make them edge ready. And the edge readiness again is in some points problematic because not all databases that work with Prisma are edge ready, so you need to add a new adapter and so on and so on. So it's like an endless chain of new problems coming up with that.
Yeah, I've been working on the Cloudflare D1 setups with Prisma, and I ran into a couple of hiccups on like big ints. So they don't, and there's a bug warning out there, but I found out I really just could use integer for those. But I do think there's definitely some hiccups on edge type runtimes. I love that you guys are using Hano on here already for API stuff, so that's really cool as well.
We actually just recently, like in December, migrated to that, and for now it's just the Next.js version. Sadly, we're working on the other two versions to migrate over to that too. But it's like it enables a whole new world of abilities, like easy. Previously, we had TRPC included, which is also a great tool, but with Hono, you get like easy streaming. You have you can just do so many things that TRPC isn't able to do, including this awesome open API spec generator where you just basically just add in the plugin and say, generate me an open API spec at this endpoint, and you're done.
Did you run into any problems? I started out trying to write that with 3.1 spec, or consume it with it, I should say. So I was first producing it with 3.1, and then when I was trying to use client creator, I can't remember which one, but it's part of the Open API tool set, and they have like a fetch one, they have a node one, and like a bunch of different ones that are in there. I ran into a lot of problems with that 3.1 spec. Once I switched down to 3.0 on both sides, everything was gravy. So
I haven't run into that problem, but there is actually a new plugin. So there previously was the Zod Open API. So it was at hono/Zod-Open API. That was the previous one, and that is not that good, to be honest. And now there is a one that's called Hono-Open API.
Oh, interesting.
And that's a lot better. So that was like a few lines of setup, and it worked really good.
Let me see which one I kind of bounced between a few of these. Let's see here. Too many microservices happening in this file. Holy smokes. I actually don't even see which one's in here. Let me go to the index real quick. I was messing around with Windsurf last night to try to like carve out some more of these endpoints quickly, and I think it changed some things. So I'm on a weird branch.
What do you think? I also tried it like a few days ago, and for me there was no big difference to Cursor.
So I feel like, and maybe I'm wrong and I'm just doing something wrong, I feel like Cursor is allowing you more contextual realities happening. So like it understands what files I'm looking at automatically, and I don't have to mess with that as much. Windsurf, I feel like I have to get pretty descriptive and like use app file and like things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. They're both kind of similar. They're both running the same engines underneath, and things like that. So, yeah, I see. I'm using Chanfana from Hano, and yes, that's what's creating the Open API spec.
Okay, so the one that I'm using is by Rhinobase, and it's like Rhinobase / Hono API, Open API. Maybe you need to try that one.
Rhinobase Open API. I feel like I came across that one too. It's amazing to me, like an open specification like this. How many tools can be built off it and surround it. So
yeah,
props to like, Open API.
It's so powerful to have that, and then being able to generate like a spec that you can use in any type of language. So like Swift or Kotlin, and then just have a type safe client in there. It's just like I don't want to go with not having a type safe client for my front-end application anymore, because that makes life so much easier.
It's amazing how much better it is, but I'm still kind of struggling with like at least in a microservice gateway, like you can specify like a gateway in all of your Open API structure, and then you go from that to a service, and that service needs to use basically like Prisma client to then access the database. And it's like I still feel like there's something missing through that chain where it could be easier, because I feel like, you know, this service and this database is okay, and the front end and my gateway are okay, but if something is off through that chain, like it's broken. Maybe I just haven't like carefully set it up yet, but we'll see. Sorry, I'm completely down a crazy pathway here. I wanted to circle back. I'll be remiss if I don't, and people at work will kill me for not asking. I want to know about authentication and kind of what it took to get there, because I feel like every person in every application, like logins first, like you have to get the people in the door. What are we going to use? And I want to know what like decisions kind of led you down this path. And I love the idea of no vendor lock-ins. So that's a knock on Firebase that I've dealt with for years. So talk to me about it.
Yeah, so we also have a very long history with authentication, and as I said in the beginning, we used Superbase Auth, which is great, and the nice thing about it is that it's also based on your own Postgres database, you know, when you have it set up there. But then with the second version, which then was the TRPC and away from Superbase version, we integrated with Lucia Auth, whatever you call that, which was kind of, so I don't know, have you worked with it?
I have a little bit. I find it a struggle personally, so I've kind of walked away from it quite a bit.
Yeah, because the thing was, it was like it gave you full control, which is something we wanted, but on the other hand side, it not saved you too much time. So it basically just gave you a few helpers like OAuth integrations and some helpers for creating sessions and so on.
Yep.
But you still had to have a lot of manual setup in there, and so we were able to drastically reduce the amount of code when we now migrated from Lucia to BetterAuth. And the great thing about BetterAuth is that we were actually some of the guys who were able to get into the development of BetterAuth. So I still write every second day to the main author of BetterAuth with some questions, with some suggestions, and some of the API designs we have incorporated into BetterAuth and Superstarter. And I think it's, from my side, it's one of the best open source libraries out there right now.
Oh wow!
It has an incredible design. It's pretty well thought through in terms of how open it is, and at the same time how much features it includes. The pace of development is incredible. So it's like we had this and this wasn't working, and he said like, yeah, just download the latest version 30 minutes later, and it was fixed. And so
That's amazing. You
it's
must
incredible how well that works. You have integrations for all major frameworks, which was a big point for me, because I wanted to have the same Auth framework for all three versions. I'm trying to keep the stack as close as possible between all the framework versions. And also it was able to support all the different databases that we support with Prisma. And the nice thing about it is that we went from, okay, we have a setup for magic link and password reset and stuff like that, have all these features with a lot less code. And then we just got like passkeys and two-factor authentication and all those things that they have that we didn't even think about out of the box. And it was just like, it took, like, we released Superstarter for Next.js with BetaAuth like a week after the official 1.0 of BetterAuth. So
wow.
We were basically the first starter kit to actually use it, and I love it.
And so are they hosted? So they
No.
how are you hooking a database endpoint up that you have to host the database somewhere then, or?
It's actually, so you're actually attaching your own database to it,
Okay.
and it has a CLI. So depending on, in our case, it's Prisma, but depending on what database setup you have, they have different adapters for different database types. But they actually have like a migration inside the CLI of BetterAuth. So you can simply say BetterAuth migrate, and it will create the necessary schema models inside your Prisma schema. So you can easily just add that to your database. And then you have basically two parts of the library. One is the backend part, which you can call from the server side, and one is the client, which gives you all the stuff for like calling the backend endpoint for login, password reset, and whatever. So it's actually all inside the application. There's no external service that is attached.
Yes.
And that was one of the most important things to me, that you have full control over all parts. And maybe as an example of how flexible BetterAuth is, it gives you, so it has a very good plugin system where you can easily add your own plugins, and you have, for example, database hooks for things like session creation, user creation, and so on. You can just hook into that part and say, okay, now here's the session created. In this case, this user should have this property added to the session, just like, and it's incredible. Like 3 lines of code, and you can just step into every little detail of the auth process. And that's something where I think right now the biggest player still, I think, is Next.auth, and it's just missing out on that.
Next
it's just
Auth
too
has
unflexible.
oh my gosh, Next Auth has been ridiculous. I'm actually at the point at work that we're probably going to pull it all of it out of our quick starts because it can't handle refresh tokens the way I want it to, and things like that, and it's become really cumbersome. So unfortunately, like, unless they can really get their arms around what's going on over there and fighting through like their update, through auth.js and trying to make that a better package, it's just been rough. So unfortunately, I think the main contributor was hired by Vercel, I thought when that happened, things would kind of get better, but so
they just announced a few new framework versions which never came, and just another example for you how good BetterAuth is, and that I'm not going to end it with that, but you can actually define the hashing algorithm for the password, which is incredibly helpful for deploying on Cloudflare, because on Cloudflare you can't use the classical bcrypt, but you have, for example, have to use the bcrypt edge version, which is like
which is edge related type stuff because of that. And I think auth.js or what Next Auth, it requires, it's either HS or RS, I can't remember, but it's like our default is not the same that matches that, and all of a sudden, like, now I have to update things so that, like, you have to change your keys you're signing things with just to match auth, and it's like, oh my gosh, it just is so frustrating. So this kind of leads a little bit further into our discussion. Most people, when they're standing up like Next.js or something like that, and they're publishing out to Vercel, they don't really think about the database side of things. And you guys do have a database requirement in here. So what are kind of the steps in that, and what suggestions for databases do you have?
So in the end, it doesn't really matter as long as it's compatible with Prisma.
Okay.
Personally, I would always recommend going with Postgres, as I think it's one of the best and most mature and also most flexible options. Sometimes people say, okay, I'm not sure about how the data is going to be structured, so I'm going with MongoDB. Where I say, please don't do that, because you can just use JSON fields in Postgres. They are the same flexible as MongoDB's document schema, but you still have a usable schema and columns defined. And so personally, when I create a new project right now, what I do is either use Neon as my database provider, because they have a incredible generous free tier. I think you can create 10 projects with up to 50 branches, and the branches thing is pretty nice, because when you connect it with Vercel, for every preview deployment, it will branch off your main branch, and then you have a clean branch that you can play on, insert dummy data for your preview branch, and it will not affect the main branch. But you can then migrate schema changes back to the main branch. Or what I just recently did, depending on where the project is going, I just created a new Postgres in Coolify. We have for my company, we have a Coolify server where we can just in 20 seconds create a new Postgres instance.
That's awesome.
Also, if you like the managed service and also their free plan is also pretty good. Still, Supabase is a great option. You have a Postgres database that you can easily connect with Prisma. You have storage that you can also attach with Superstarter. If you like, I had that recently where I had a project that I was not paying for. It wasn't the free plan, and they just shut that down because there was no activity for 90 days, and I wasn't able to recover it into the Supabase UI. So what I had to do is they created a Postgres dump with all the data in it, and I just created a Supabase instance on Coolify, which you can do also with a one-click installation. And then I pulled in the data from their Postgres dump. So I recreated that project in there. But the nice thing about it is, so personally, my experience is you never want to bet on one provider. At least if it's like I don't think Supabase is going anywhere in the next few months or years. But the nice thing about it is, even if they were, you could easily just take all your data and self-host it, because Supabase, as it is open source, which you pay for is only their cloud offering. And you can just take the platform, host it yourself on Coolify or whatever server you want, and then you can run your thing forever. And so that would be, so maybe to keep it short, my recommendations would be either Neon, Supabase, or self-hosting it with Coolify.
And would you use like Vercel's version of Neon, so Vercel Postgres, or just directly on Neon itself?
Actually, they're grandfathering that in, right? They, as I understood, they are actually removing their own offering and making that Neon integration for Vercel. So and the same goes for, I think, the key value store was Upstage, when I get that right. Like under the hood, everything from Vercel was always a different, like an external service. They just called it like that. And I think now they are just they are migrating that into integration. So you can, when you create a Postgres from Vercel, you are directly creating something inside inside Neon. But the nice thing about that integration is that all the billing goes through Vercel. So you can create a new database from Vercel on Neon, and you're built by Vercel.
Yeah, I didn't know if they were like upcharging any of those fees. I haven't done anything large enough to actually notice. But if, like, you know, Neon charges Vercel, Vercel charges you a little bit more, so they make money or whatever.
Yeah, so like it always depends. For things like the database and maybe key value store, I wouldn't use, if it's just a small demo project, something to play around with. I don't mind using using Vercel's integrated service or whatever you're using. It, like other cloud providers have their own small integration or abstraction of on some other servers. But like for the pricing part, Vercel Postgres or Vercel Vercel Postgres or Vercel database was pretty expensive in comparison to, you know, when you put it on a VPS somewhere with automated backup and stuff like that, you can have like a huge database with good performance for less than $5 a month.
Yeah. Yep. Great call out. Very cool. I mean, that solves most of the stack. I think our users have probably all heard of Next.js and Tailwind. Looks like you splashed in a little bit TanStack query in there.
Yeah, heavily using it. Yeah, and I love it. It's also all the TanStack stuff is amazing.
This is an awesome stack. I mean, this is what I use today for the most part, but not in a nice starter that's like built out. I usually have to go into V0 and start churning out pages manually. So this is fantastic.
Yeah. So the part that we're currently also working on is some kind of, just as you said, creating the UI. We're working on some generator commands for the CLI that you can easily create, like when you create a new entity. Let's say, I don't know, I want to create the entity project. You just enter the project thing, and it creates like the CRUD operation in the API and a new list page and a new form page, and then you can just start your form from there on. Some of that will be probably really helpful, because I realized that myself when building something with Superstarter. You can in fact deploy something, and I did that last weekend. You can deploy something from the initial CLI creation to its live on Vercel within less than an hour.
Wow, that's really cool, and it's like productionalized for the most part, right?
Yes, absolutely.
You have to hook in like a couple keys with Stripe and stuff like that, and you're off to the races.
But of course, we all know that this is not building a SaaS. It's you have login and so on, but there is no functionality in there, but because that's the part that you're actually about to implement. And you know, from there on, it's the little details. And actually, one of the we just recently changed our headline into what it is right now with scalable and production ready SaaS, and we had the same, sorry for the word, the same shit headline that most of the other boilerplates have with these like ship in days, not weeks, or something like that.
Yeah.
We had that previously, and I was hopping on the train there. But the reality is, you're not building a profitable SaaS within even 2 or 3 weeks. You might get the first MVP out within in a weekend. That's totally possible. But you're not building a really profitable SaaS with all the nitty-gritty details within a few days. That's just unrealistic.
I mean, every developer dreams that, but it's usually not the case.
Yeah. But at least we save you the part that you don't want to do, including the dark mode.
Yeah, fair enough. Very cool. Well, any last minute thoughts before we wrap up?
No, not for me.
Awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Everything on, Superstarter, like I said, is stuff I deal with day to day, and like I find it takes me forever to get everything up to where you're basically starting at, and so to be able to kind of drop that in and go from there each and every time is amazing. Oh, I was going to ask you one other thing. So it's currently, if you're watching this right now, there's a New Year $50 off special. Does that include like as many projects as you ever want to build when that's a one-time fee?
Yeah, exactly. It's a one-time purchase where you get free updates as long as you have access to the repository, which will be forever, unless GitHub shuts down. Which, but yeah, you can
I'll be out of a job at that point.
You can use it for as many projects as you like. You can customize it and use it for different projects. We have actually, as we have been running for 2.5 years, we've actually had customers who have already built their second or third application with it, and also the lifetime support basically, and the updates of versions and new functionality is also included in that price. Yeah,
that's amazing. Super cool product. Well, I really, really appreciate it. I think it's amazing, Jonathan, and all the success in the future.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, everyone.